lucky to have some Arctic leaders with us, which is never something that I thought I'd be saying in central London. We have some admin to go through. First of all, fire safety. We're not expecting any fire alarms, so if you do hear one, treat it as a real one. There's fire exits at the top here and down at the bottom there. Social media. We have a hashtag. If anybody wants to tweet anything, we'd love to see your photos. It's hashtag ICArcticPanel, and it's up at the top there. And finally, what do we have? 1 second. Oh, we're going to be recording the event. So we've got a camera up there and a camera over there. If anybody doesn't want to be filmed, you're probably not going to be seen in it if you're at the back, but obviously don't ask questions if you don't want to be heard or anything like that. Yeah, that's it basically. With that, I will pass over to Jim, who's going to be leading the session, and he is from the Pacific Environment. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody. I want to first to say I'm Jim Gamble. I'm a Senior Arctic Program Officer with Pacific Environment. And just to give you a little context, Pacific Environment is an environmental NGO based out of San Francisco, California. But we have an Arctic program office in Anchorage, Alaska, and that's where DJ and I are coming from, Anchorage, Alaska. We have, as was mentioned, an amazing panel of Indigenous leaders. They represent a wealth of knowledge about Alaska and the Russian Federation. And they are really here to tell you about their communities, about what changing the Arctic means to them, and to answer your questions. So I think all of you should feel really free to think about questions and feel free to ask questions, because that's what this is all about. I should also say, just really briefly, that there are some sign-in sheets around. DJ's been spreading them a bit, where we just kind of want to get a feel for who's here. And if you're interested in information about Pacific Environment, other things we're doing, give us your email address. We'd be happy to keep you updated on our activities. In addition to our Arctic program, Pacific Environment also works in the Russian Federation. We work in China primarily on plastic litter issues, and also in Southeast Asia and Vietnam, also working on plastic litter issues. We also have a marine program that works on plastic litter more generally and trying to keep it out of the ocean. So what we're doing here this week in London is attending a meeting of the International Maritime Organization. It's, of course, based here in London, and it handles all issues related to the regulation and management of international shipping. There's a number of issues that are on the table this week. The committee that's currently meeting is called MEPC, or the Marine Environmental Protection Committee. And we are working on issues such as heavy fuel oil in the Arctic. We're trying to get it banned so that shipping companies have to use lighter, less damaging fuels. We're also working on greenhouse gases in the shipping industry generally, trying to get the shipping industry to do their part to reduce greenhouse gases in an effort to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. We're also working very specifically on providing an Indigenous representation to the IMO. At this point, there is no consistent Indigenous representation, and so this big international body is making decisions about what will happen to communities in the Arctic without members of Arctic communities there being represented. So all of the panelists that you're going to see tonight, they are at the IMO specifically because we want their voices to be heard about the issues that affect them. So that is enough about all of that stuff. Let's get to the really fun part of the evening, and let me introduce the first panelist. His name is Delbert Pungowiyi. Delbert is president of the native village of Savoonga. Sibonga is a community on St. Lawrence Island, and St. Lawrence Island is between Alaska and the Russian Federation in the northern Bering Sea. So, Delbert, you have the floor, sir.
Koyakamsi, Huanga Yubigastun at Katunikat Ianga, Huanga Masingam Nation Ganga, Huanga Amataka Kiwamit Pikatna. My name is, Yupikivan name is Ianga. It's a beginning of our songs. I was named by my third generation grandfather, great great-great-grandfather who was estimated to be 109 at his passing. He was also my teacher about our way of life before discovery, excuse me, and to present date. He passed away when I was 7 years old. He was estimated to be 109 at his passing. I went to the Western School when I was 4 years old, and my grandfather, Alfred Tamlu, out of 8 of us siblings, I was a grandparent's child. I was raised by them, mostly by them. After my first school, attending the Western School, I went home to them and we had our dinner. After dinner, he said, "Now you're going to our school." And when I went to the Amos Pinaya, my great-great-great-grandfather, he was the keeper of our traditional, religious, spiritual way of life since time immemorial. There were many students when I went to that school. We had to kneel on our knees with its ultimate respect to our elders. It was instilled into us to have the utmost respect to all the adults. And there were many students there. We had to sit on our knees, and he would sit there and verbally teach our way of life. My island is St. Lawrence Island. Original name is Sibonga. It's 100 miles long, 1.2 million acres, over 400 miles of coastal beaches around our island. We're much closer to Russia than we are mainland Alaska. From the tip of Gamble, there's 2 communities on my island. Savoonga, originally pronounced Sibonga, and Gamble, the original name for our island is Sivukak, meaning rung. It is said that we survived the last ice age, and when the earth, Mother Earth settled, when all the ice melted, the land bridge, which you probably heard about between Alaska and Russia, went underwater from the melt. And it is said, the legend of our island, that our Creator reached under the ocean with both his hands, pulled out our island, wrung it, and set it there. From an aerial view, it looked like 2 giant hands had once upon a time gripped it, wrung it. From an aerial view, it looks like a sponge. It is taught to us from our ancestor times, our highest respect to our Creator and our Mother Earth. In our language, Mother Earth, Nachlechput, our Great Mother. And it is believed according to our spiritual, religious belief, that Mother Earth is a living, breathing being. And they use this metaphor that if she was not a living, breathing being, not even a flower would grow. It would be void of life. And so we had the highest respect for our Creator and our highest respect to our Mother Earth. And we were brought here, we were brought to our Mother Earth to be the caretakers of our Mother Earth. And we were taught to take only what our Mother gives us, Mother Earth, and nothing more. And not to take more than what we need, and not to take what we don't need, and nothing more. And it is our belief that all of us on this planet, my house in Sibonga, Honganika, my home, my house, Another word we called our Mother Earth is Nifut, our home, the whole Mother, our home for all of us. And it is taught to us that there are four brothers, the white, the yellow, the black, and the red. And we are the Red Nation. We are better known as Eskimos. That is not our true identity. Our true identity is Masinga. Simple meaning, human beings like us that depend on the Bering Sea and our belief in our Creator and our Mother Earth. That all of us, the sacred four directions, north, south, east, and west, the sacred elements that give life, make life possible on earth, earth, wind, fire, and water. And each of our brothers were given a gift. Our gift was to be the caretakers of our Mother Earth. I apologize, I don't remember, excuse me. Each of us, four brothers, were given a gift. Ours was to be the caretakers of our Mother Earth. I apologized in what order it went. The other brother was given the gift of the four elements, air, to be the caretakers of the air. The other brother, the third brother, was given the gift of the waters, to be the caretakers of the waters. And the fourth brother was given the gift of fire, to be the caretakers of the fire. So, in our belief that we're all brothers and sisters, from whatever ethnic background that we may have come from. And it is said that kind of slipped on that one. Oh, there we are right there. Sibonga is right there by the black dot. Gamble is on the tip over there, Sibonga. We have two strong currents, one going south on the east end, the other one going south. It is like a filter. There's where Sibonga is. Sibonga, Gamble, the current going down south, the current going north. Our island is like a filter in the Bering Sea, Bering Strait. Thank you. That we have the utmost respect for each other. Since the last ice age, we survived the last ice age, and I've been talking too much, I think. You have any questions so far? Yes. Sibonga, last census was, give or take, 900 or under. Gamble, we're a little bit more than Gamble, but our archaeologists in the 1980s came to our island, and they were escorted around the island. Their purpose was to find out how many people actually lived before discovery. They estimated over 4,000, but from my grandparents' teachings, their conservative estimate was over 10,000. In the early 1800s, it's not no date to it. A big famine struck us, 2 big famines. The first big famine took more than half our people, and the second big famine was in 1878, took almost all. How we know this is a Pangalok from Gamble, who was the survivor of the last big famine in 1878, 264 survived. My mother was from the mainland. She was adopted. Many of the children from Nome area were adopted out to the island, concerned for the genetics breakdown. So I'm part Inupiaq, Siberian Yupik. The survivors called it when our island went into a deep, deep sleep. Many of our tribes around the island, it is very emotional for me, are extinct. Their unique genetic makeup lost forever. We all spoke the same language. We migrated from Russia to govern ourselves, to take care of our own selves, and we have done so. Our artifacts date to be over 2000 BC. We believe it is much older than that. I dove underwater for our island was known to be the bull walrus capital of the world. And Uncle, can I use your pointer, please? Over here, there's a couple of 3 islands does not show on this map. 6 miles off our island over here, called the Pungowiyi Islands. That's where the walrus is hauled out. And it is like the elephant's graveyard. So they would haul out there by the thousands, tens of thousands. When they hauled out there, nobody bothered them because there's so many of them. Even the killer whales never bothered them. So we have old village sites underwater that are 15 to 25 feet. So I believe it's much older. I think my time's up.
You'll get more chance to answer questions at the end.
Okay.
Thank you, Delbert.
Okay, thank you. Kuya kamsi igam sakayo we kamsi khoni angliutam ni. I am happy for you to come and hear us, to take your time. Our brothers and sisters, we are all one. All one. Atasi ukut nunami khoni. We are all one people. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Thanks very much, Delbert. And I should explain, too, that these gentlemen have quite a schedule this week. And this is the 3rd presentation that Delbert's done today, which I think is fantastic because we're trying to make sure that as many people as possible get the opportunity to hear what they have to say. Our next panelist is Eduard Zdor. Eduard is a past director of the Chukotka Traditional Marine Mammal Hunters Association in Chukotka, Russia. Currently, Eduard is a PhD candidate at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, but moreover, he is a committed Indigenous activist who has been a strong voice for his people for many years. Eduard?
Thanks, Jim.
Sorry, everybody. We're going to see some pictures of subsistence, in particular subsistence whaling. So I just wanted to warn people that some of these pictures are graphic and bloody, and that's the reality of what it's like to live a subsistence life. So, go ahead, Edward.
Thanks again, Jim. Good evening, everyone. I would like to continue to show you our map. So, Delbert from here, and my hometown is right here. Not so far from here. And as Delbert said already, we are actually, I would say his ancestor came not from Russia. They just came from a regional place where Inuit, Siberian Yupik, and Chukchi, I am Chukchi, lived for millennia, have been living for millennia. And now I would like to say you, I am Chukchi, which is not Eskimo or Yupik or Inupiat, but we are really close. We live together, we are neighbors, we have a different languages, but traditions, with traditional subsistence, culture is really close, really close. We have the same dance, we have same songs, not literally, but because we are neighbors, we use the dance and songs of our neighbors, and they use ours. I'm typical Chukchi man who was born in the reindeer herder family, but traditionally Chukchi divided themselves on the two groups. One of them is reindeer herders, or before that, hunters for the caribou, and the second group of Chukchi is Maritime Chukchi, which is really which style of life is really close to Inupiat and Siberian Yupik. And all my life I lived there on the Arctic coast of Chukotka, and what I know about sea hunting, what I know about traditional subsistence of Maritime Chukchi, I got from my father, who is a Maritime Chukchi. This is not my pictures. This is picture one of Moscow photographer, and there is just some maybe most brightful or delightful pictures of our life, but literally not so many people live the same life like you see here. I would say maybe just 10 or 20% of indigenous villagers lived doing, sorry for my English, doing some traditional subsistence. And we are strongly dependent from sea. As a researcher, I conducted many interviews during last 15 years, speaking with indigenous people from different languages, different settlements, and this is just my estimation. Approximately 50% of diet of modern Chukchi and Siberian Yupik is a traditional diet. So it's a meat of marine mammals, fish, birds, and plants and berries, exactly. And 20th century was the most worst time in our life. Despite what Delbert told to you just before me, yes, we had starvation from time to time. We had something, but 20th century, I mean, the Soviet period of our life was most worst, and the problem was not about literal physiological survival, just because most big problem was gap between generations. This, in the mid of 20th century, or maybe 1960, 1970, the boarding school became the main thing to educate children. And in this time, we got really big gap between generations. So children stopped to speak their native language. Children stopped to interact with their parents. So for this reason, literally in 2 or 3 decades, we lost main part of our identity. Just because children who grew up in the boarding school, they became to be a modern people, but at the same time, we lost something which divide us, indigenous people, from the other part of the world. So, and today, I guess maybe from 10 to 30% of indigenous people of Chukotka speak in their native language. And mostly this is this generation of who are 50 years old. Other people, our generation, I guess maybe from 40 to 50 years old, we can understand elders, but we can't speak. And maybe some of you knows that the language shaped our mind, and language shaped our culture and what we think about this world. So the situation, and what I know about Arctic around the world, the situation is really close in Alaska also. We have the same problem. We have the same problem with loss of language, loss of culture. We have the same problem with suicide and and alcoholism, and something, and so on. But anyway, elders tried with younger generation, tried to preserve our identity. We are how do I say it? We try to unite people. We try to combine them. We try to even using not our languages, I mean English and Russian, try to explain history of our people for them. For example, in my region, last maybe 2 years became very important topics of our discussion is what we had. I mean, Chukchi people, we had 150 years war with Russian Empire. It is historical fact, and at the end of this war, we signed it, kind of, I don't know how. Okay, peace agree according to this agreement. Our ancestor did not have an obligation to pay taxes. So my people was really great people, despite we are just 15,000. And I guess that's what I want to say to you just in my short time. If you have a question, you just can ask.
Yeah, we could have time for one question for Eduard before we move on. Anybody? Right there.
I'm wondering, especially after your peace agreement, how involved are you with the Russian government right now? How are you?
What's your relationship with the Russian government now?
Gotcha. We are different now. We are not. We are not enemy. We are part of Russian state. Even just because 99% of Chukchi speak Russia, and we recognize Pushkin, Lermontov, Tchaikovsky as a part of our culture, not literally, But it is not just our problem. It's a problem for the whole world. We are really we live on a really small planet, and globalization is a fact of modern time. Yeah. So, but anyway, we try to distinct us from other people, just on the level of instinct. And every family who wants to save themselves.
Thank you, Eduard. Okay, and our next panelist is, get ready for this, is George Edwardson. George is president of the Anukiak community of the Arctic Slope. He is also a delegate for the Inuit Circumpolar Council, which is the indigenous representation of the Inuit people to the Arctic Council. Yeah, we just need to go forward a little bit. Just keep that map, George. Okay. All right, George, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is George Edwardson, and let me get this map reduced bigger. I need to go back so I can see the whole state. And you can even put Canada in if you want. There you go, some more, a little bit more. There you go, perfect. Okay, when you look at this map, the very top tip is my home. That's Barrow, Alaska. I've been the regional tribal president of my people for the past 36 years, educated in the Western world, picked up 3 college degrees in the process, and the 8 communities I have today are right at the Canadian border. Kaktovik. There's another one here called Nuiqsut. That's my hometown, Barrow. Wainwright is right here. Point Lay's here, and Point Hope down here. And another mountain village right in here on Aktovik Pass. 8 communities with 13,000 plus people. And the oil industry, everybody knows about Prudhoe Bay, is, you know, my invader is the oil industry. And, well, that's about 30% of the U.S.'s oil daily consumption. And the changes that occurred to us in 1887, starting from in Canada, all along the coast, the U.S. Bureau of Census done a census and counted over 340,000 of us in 1887. After the first sailing boat came, our numbers went down to less than 1,200 in 1950. And I can go into details and tell you stories. My father, he buried 6 out of every 7 in my town when he was a teenager. And you heard the stories about the beginning, about the 4 brothers. We claim the first mother was our relative. Her name was Sidaren, and she had 4 sons and 4 daughters. And the sons were the boys that Delbert was telling you about, their names, who they are. And our problem today, the reason I'm over here is because we have global warming occurring to us, and there's a big shipping about to start coming across, going over the pole to the other side of the world. And they're telling us we'll get over 1,000 ships a day coming through. The narrow part is a little over 20 miles right here. When you get that area that close together with that many ships, you disrupt the migration of the animals that are there, the birds, the ducks, the whales, the seals. they get altered. The last third of the world's fish is in this area. There was an international gathering in Seward, Alaska, that found out that the world used to be, let's say in the beginning, let's count all the fish as one fish, just to give you a comparison. 1/3 of the world's fish came out of the Pacific Fire Rim. That's gone because of the population growth. They ate that fish up. Now they're up in my part fishing up here to feed themselves. And then you keep looking at the world, another third of the world's fish turned out to be the North Sea between Europe and Greenland. And about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, I went to Norway on a gathering like this to talk about the Arctic Ocean. I found a treaty between Russia and Norway. When one country fishes the North Sea, the other country don't. And they alternate like this. And that had been going on for quite a few years. And then this is the last third of the world's fish, right here. And here's Siberia, 168 miles this way, going out 200 miles, going to Point Barrow, going out 200 miles, bringing it across. It turned out this area, when you looked at the temperature gradient of the Arctic Ocean, was the nursery of the last third of the world's fish. This is where all the salmon and all the fish you harvest, that's where they grow up. I ran into a seismic done right here off the ocean. Their signals in their seismic exploration was so loud over here in Banks Island in Canada, the industry had to shut off their instruments because the noise coming from over 500 miles away was so loud they couldn't use their seismic instruments in Canada. That's what they were doing to the ocean when they were looking for oil. At the same time, the salmon that usually comes down to this part of the world, all the way down to, the West Coast, all the way in the eastern part of Asia, northern part of Japan, all those fish were chased into all my rivers up north. The migration didn't occur. The Yukon River never caught any fish that year. That's what 1 year of seismic did. It altered the migrations of the last third of the world's fish. The state tried to blame, big commercial ships tried to blame each other's countries, but no, it was just one company doing seismic right here that altered the whole thing. That's Shell Oil, if you want to know. And education-wise, I'm a geologist, a mining and petroleum technician, and the only certified gas field operator in the state of Alaska. And when you look at the land in Alaska, I'm one of the 5 geologists that made the geological map for the state. So when it comes to non-renewable resources in this area, it's all right here. And that's not all. We have an international organization we created called Inuit Circumpolar Conference. We took our relatives from Siberia, Alaska, Canada, and Greenland. And we got our leadership together in one room in Barrow and created this international organization because the world was starting to invade us. And we needed to, get together so we could talk. We picked up people all the way from the southwestern parts to my two, wow, that's pretty good. My two cousins, right here in the front, their parents came. And from there, I've been that organization's technical consultant since it started. And now I'm a member of it representing the northern part of Alaska. And I could go and tell you about the starvations and things like that. My population went from over 340,000 to less than 1,200 in 50 years, in 63 years. And that, my father was there burying his family. And we're not going to cry about that. We're going to move on ahead. Because I have children now and I have grandchildren who have to live in the land. With over 1,000 ships coming through on a daily basis, the whale migration is going to stop. They won't be able to migrate south anymore. The fisheries that feed Western North America, Eastern Asia, and Northern Japan are going to stop. And when that happens, there goes all the, the animals that live in the area down here in the rest of the world. There's the bears, there are eagles, other fish. Where are they going to go? The people. This is the last third of the world's fish, okay? This is where you get your Alaskan fish from. When that stops, where are you going to eat from? It's the choice is going to be yours because you're right at the age, you're being educated how to live in this world. How are you going to feed yourself if I can't protect the fish and the whales? That's a big problem, and I got 1 minute. Okay, let me stop there and ask you, got questions? Okay, yes? Okay. Oh.
What other parts of climate change really affect it?
Okay, the other parts of climate change effect is from the shore, from the edge of the ocean going in, all the lakes from the Arctic all along the coast to the west, 10 miles away from the ocean, all the lakes, the freshwater lakes, have drained into the ocean right now to start off with. The whole coast of Alaska and northern part of Canada, the water is changing because when the melting of the permafrost occurs, permafrost here in Barrow starts, the bottom of it is at 900 feet. The top of it used to thaw 4 to 6 inches every summer. Today, it's now over 7 on the coast. And the shoreline when I was your age, the shoreline was 1 mile further out. And with the shoreline 1 mile further out, it's now a mile in. There's a place, whoa, I'm gone. There's a place 150 miles to the south of my town we call Umiat. And that time, it was less than 10,000 years ago, no, more closer to 25,000 years ago, when we were on the coast. We never left the edge of the water, but my town had migrated 150 miles south, still living on the edge of the ocean. When all the ice on the land, South Pole, and all our glaciers melt, the sea level is going to rise exactly 254 feet above where it's at. And when you look at the sea level rising globally to 254 feet up, 82% of the world's farmland is going to go under the ocean. you're going to have to feed yourself now with the fish gone in the world. Your farmland under the ocean, where are you going to eat from? This is a serious problem you have to solve because you're right at the perfect age. It's going to be your problem. I'm an old man, so I'm not going to be in the way. And the plants, the trees that used to grow in the tundra would lay flat on the ground, and the only thing that would come up were the leaves. Today, those trees are now over 7 feet tall and growing up because the permafrost has melted from the surface going down. It's over 7 foot a year it does that. The ocean, in my ocean, I used to have it covered in ice 3 months ago. It used to be frozen in. I don't freeze until after the end of January. And if I freeze it, I'd be lucky if it's for 3 months. I go whaling and I can't bring the whale up on ice anymore because the ice only freezes only part of the year, not 9 months like it used to before. It's 3 or 4 months if I'm lucky. The animals have changed. I have birds that belong in the warm weather in the mountains south of my home, where these 2 cousins of mine, their birds have moved up north. The migratory habits of the birds have changed. The whales don't migrate south anymore. My cousin here has to go north to go whaling. And the seals are the same way. The walrus that used to migrate all the way over to Canada, riding ice floes, they're gone. And now they don't get within 150 miles of my home to the west. I could go on all day and tell you what global warming is going to do, and that's what it's doing. Any more questions?
We'll go some more at the end, George.
Okay, there's one right here. Go ahead.
So I noticed, like on the end of your point, it says that plastic, I'm guessing, was manufactured somewhere other than your island. What is your perspective on free will trade?
Okay, we're all brothers. You heard what my cousin said. We're all related, and your first mom was my relative. So when I look at every one of you in front of you, 7/8 of your blood is mine. We're the same. Whether you like it or not, that's the way it goes. And with our population like that, we have to learn to get together. And we even know some of your history, like Apollo, the Greek god. He was a shipwrecked sailor who got washed up in eastern Greenland and picked up by a seal hunter. He took him home because his people always doubted what he said, and to show he found a different kind of person. And then that coming winter, that community started running low on food, so they shipped him to the west. And this kept on going till he reached Point Hope 9 years later. Then the Point Hope man took him across the Bering Straits to Siberia and told him, you walk in that direction, you're going to end up home. And here we have a shipwrecked sailor, Greek, that fell off the out of the boat because his boat got crushed, come up on the other side of the flat world. Only God can do that, so they made him a god. Okay?
Thank you, George. Thank you, George. I think what we're going to do now, I will introduce Verner Wilson III. Verner is a senior ocean campaigner for Friends of the Earth, but he was also worked with the Bristol Bay Native Association in Alaska. He's from Dillingham, Alaska, and he has quite a depth of knowledge about these issues himself. But I think what we'll do, because we're moving ahead in time, is let's bring everybody up and just start fielding some more questions and letting everybody talk. So Eduard, Delbert, George, Verner, come up too, and we'll get some questions and get you involved in that as well. Slide in there. You get on the inside. Okay, so you get us started.
For Edward, you were saying how your tribe or community doesn't pay taxes with the Russian government. I was wondering if you guys have a local tax or anything that helps fund, public health or public education in your area that's outside of the Russian taxes.
No, today we are fully part of Russia, and there is no. It was history. It was the peace agreement was signed in the 18th century, and when, according to this agreement, we lived ourselves just management, doing self-management until Soviet authority came to us, and they brutally, and literally killed many of indigenous leaders. They removed whole property from Chukchi people, and they pushed us to the state farm and so on. And children were pushed to the boarding school. So if you want to destroy any tribe or any people or any state, you just need to create a gap between generations. And the next generation became to be a part of invaders.
Okay, let's see.
And before I'm
go ahead,
paying
George.
no taxes. In the northern part of Alaska, we do not pay property tax. As a regional tribal government, I hold the sovereignty of my people, and all you have to do is ask the United States, and they will tell you, yes, that's true.
Okay, upper left.
Actually, it's
I think you're going to get a different answer from Eduard than you would get from the others. But Eduard, do you want to start?
I can just say that, or just read, just because actually I got lecture for you guys, but I didn't. So Russia is a real strange combination of Soviet property, capitalism property, imperialism, and so on. I don't know for how it's became to be a fact, but now we have a private property on the land, but not for indigenous people. We can just take lands on the right of usicraft, I guess, usurcraft. So it's kind of rent. We don't have right to get land, our land and property.
And
Delbert, then George.
okay, I was going to say we had a land claims in 1971 in Alaska, and in 1968. The world discovered oil in Prudhoe Bay. That's between two of my villages. And the United States realized that they had conducted leases on land they didn't own. It was owned by us indigenous people who were there. So President Nixon made a phony deed where he gave 8% of what we owned and claimed the other 92%, saying it belonged to the United States, and to justify their lease sale. So there are 13 regions, and out of the 13 regions, 12 of the regions in Alaska now own about 8% of the state of Alaska with state title.
On our island, in 1971, as he mentioned, the Land Claim Settlement Act, Washington claims they gave the mainland 44 million acres of land. Actually, they took that 44 million acres of land, which rightfully belonged under the tribes since time immemorial, and gave it to these profit-making corporations called ANCSA corporations. My people on the island were given a choice to get a share of the $1 billion that was given for the Land Claim Settlement Act, was given a choice to give up some of our island to get a share of that money. Both communities, Savoonga and Gamble, Sibonga and Gamble, both converged and had a meeting together. They chose the entire island. They didn't want no share of the money. Our island, we wanted to keep it. From surface to subsurface. On the mainland, they made these regional corporations. Within each region, in the Bering Straits region, Bering Straits Regional Corporation, who holds the surface and the subsurface rights. The other communities that they call that the mother corporation, smaller villages, they impose these ANCSA corporations on them. They have only surface rights. So the subsurface rights are under the mother corporation. I'm very proud, and I thank my grandparents and our people on the island to choose the whole island, the whole 1.2 million acres of land. As I said, we did not want a share of the money. We wanted our island, all of it. Thank you.
And it is a unique situation. They own wholly their island. In the Red Beret.
Sorry, I have missed the point that, George, you have mentioned a lot of environmental programs, and I'm wondering if there are some action has been taken from NGO, environmental NGO, or the policy from the government to solve or mitigate this problem.
The NGO was called Inuit Circumpolar Conference, and it's only a equivalent to a Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. It's not government, it's NGO, non-governmental organizations. And governments like I represent, they have us in there as members, but they've outvoted us with, the state-oriented organizations. In Barrow, the money he mentioned, the $1 billion that they collected, came from the lease sale of my land, and they took that money and divided it amongst the other relatives of mine in Alaska. The money they collected was the $1 billion that they had received from Prudhoe Bay. And the environmental troubles we have are many. One of them is the dew line site, the early warning systems. They contaminated the ocean so bad. My cousins in Canada cannot breastfeed their babies because of the PCB level in their body. You heard from Gamble about the PCB too, and I have the same problem in the north. Right now, today, I'm burying a person, a member of my government, a person on the average of 1 every 3 days. Right now, today, it's been going on continuous. It has not stopped.
This is a question to Mr. Pungowiyi and Mr. Anderson. What are the relations like with the current administration in Washington, D.C.? Are you fearing some kind of worse, the situation will become worse with Mr. Trump, or has it been bad altogether for a long time?
I had a choice to come here to IMO or go talk to the President of the United States. Instead, I sent my executive director to Washington to talk to Trump, and I came here because I figured this was more important. And he is not the first president that has, invited me to D.C. The last 4 presidents I've sat down and talked with 3 of them because they do recognize our sovereignty.
We are the first sovereign Arctic nations. Out of the 4 brothers, we are not recognized by the international family, from the United Nations. Our country, America, Vinita had fought for its sovereignty. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals supported them and said that we had not signed away our sovereignty in the Land Claims Settlement Act of 1971. The state of Alaska put up $1 million to take the fight to the United States Supreme Court. We knew that the decision was already made before it was heard. The United States Supreme Court overturned the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and said that we had signed away our sovereignty in the Land Claims Settlement Act of 1971. Sovereignty cannot be touched. Who can tell us what sovereignty looks like? It is a God-given right to all the peoples in the world. Sovereignty cannot be signed away on a piece of paper. Sovereignty cannot be put in a showcase. Sovereignty has never left us. Sovereignty has always been with us. Bill Clinton at least federally recognized the tribes as federally recognized sovereign nations. And yet we are denied the right, the privileges, and all the powers of a nation. What Trump has tried to do is to just take away our tribal status and recognize us as racist. That is racist. That will never happen. God will never let that happen. And so, at least the United Nations have allowed, for years, would not let no indigenous people into the United Nations. Some years back, we have now a platform in the United Nations, those of us that believe that someday we will be recognized and accepted as sovereign nations. At least we have our foot in the door in the United Nations. Now we have to fight hard to get the rest of ourselves in there and have a seat and to be recognized as equals. Thank you.
As a regional tribal government, I made it to the Supreme Court twice. First time, the United States refused to hear my case, and they told us that they could keep our case from coming up for at least another 100 years, and they could do it within their laws. We tried it again a second time, and we made it in, and we won. The Arctic belonged to us, but before we could collect it, our lawyers were killed on Christmas Day, and then no other law firm will take our case to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said we won, but the United States refuses to follow its own rules.
When only 50 miles between us. That's unbelievable, and there is no justice.
Can I please ask Verner just a question about how Friends of the Earth is facilitating discussion between Indigenous leaders and anyone that influences the global?
Thank you. I was one of the first Indigenous people to come to the International Maritime Organization in London back in October, along with Eduard. There were 6 of us, and I'm glad that Friends of the Earth International is trying to bring, we're bringing Arctic leaders, including what I call my uncles right here. I'm glad you were able to hear from them, and we try to encourage Indigenous peoples from the Arctic to be more involved, because before we came, there were no Arctic Indigenous voices. Even though IMO, the United Nations body that regulates international shipping, was deciding on these very issues, such as the Polar Code, they were deciding these issues without consulting with Arctic people, the actual people that live in the Arctic. And I think that's wrong, and I'm glad that we have since then engaged with people, brought people to the IMO, have resolutions passed by our Indigenous organizations, and we're bringing our message to young people like you, and I'm very glad that you're here, because as they said, it's your future. And 10 years ago, I graduated from a college just like this, and I was part of an environmental organization and an environmental club like this, and this is, I think, one of the most important issues that it's one of the most important professions that you could get into. So I thank you all very much for being here and caring about the Arctic and our people.